Can you imagine if Colonel Parker was the Beatles' manager? The truth is it almost happened.
I like to live up to my reputation of being a nice guy. This is it, folks.
Ever since 1964, when the Beatles first met Colonel Parker, they were intrigued by him, especially John Lennon. Quote, John liked Colonel Parker enormously, said Lennon's best friend, Pete Shotton. Lennon was impressed with Colonel Parker after hearing him tell the Beatles stories from his carnival days, like his dancing chickens, which were activated by an electric hot plate on the floor of their cage. He's an amazing character, a real hustling showman, John told Shotton. When the Beatles' manager Brian Epstein died in August 1967, Elvis Presley and the Colonel sent a telegram to the Beatles that said, "Deepest condolences on the loss of a good friend to you and all of us." Soon after, the Beatles would ask Colonel Parker to manage them. John Lennon knew that the Beatles were in trouble, in terms of business, once Brian died. He said a few years later, quote, "I knew that we were in trouble then. I didn't really have any misconceptions about our ability to do anything other than play music, and I was scared. I thought, we've had it," unquote.
We don't do the money side of it, you know. Brian does that.
And we don't particularly worry
Just tell
about
us
it.
what we get in the end.
We pay tax and things, but we don't know how much or how much we've made or anything, you know, because if we were going to worry about that, we'd be nervous wrecks by now.
In business terms, the Beatles knew very little, revealed Brian Epstein's assistant, Tony Bramwell. They were very like Elvis Presley with Colonel Parker in this respect. I don't think they were capable of running their own lives, much less their careers, for some years. They presumed Brian and his secretary and people like me were there to TCB, take care of business, and doubtless things would have continued to run on a fairly even keel, probably to this date, if Brian had not died, unquote. Other artists frequently asked the Colonel to manage them, but he always refused, citing that all his time was devoted to Elvis. But Parker was very helpful and gracious to other artists. For example, Parker was generous in the amount of advice he gave to Brian Epstein when the Beatles came over for their first American tour in 1964. The Beatles thought Parker was a character, but they liked him and appreciated how he was getting top dollar for Elvis. Presley's road manager, Joe Esposito, confirmed that after Brian Epstein died, John Lennon approached the Colonel to ask if he would manage the Beatles. But the Colonel said no.
What other manager would have turned down the Beatles and kept Elvis? And he could have had the Beatles and Elvis at one time. Sure did. I saw the telegrams in his office, and he said, "I only handle one artist at a time."
Parker also turned down many other stars over the years, including Anne Margaret and Tom Jones. He only wanted to devote his energy towards his one superstar client. Who knows how the Beatles' story would have ended differently if Colonel Parker, instead of Alan Klein, had agreed to manage the group. Unfortunately, in less than 3 years after Epstein's death, as a result of business entanglements and disagreements, the Beatles disbanded. Reading through some things that John felt and hearing some stuff, I think he thought, right, this is it. This is the end. This is the end of the Beatles, and it kind of was, said Paul McCartney. We made a few more albums, but we were sort of winding up. We always felt we'd come full circle, and Brian's death was part of that. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like this video to help this channel grow. For more fascinating facts about the Beatles, read Trina Young's book, Elvis and the Beatles. Read a free excerpt at daytrippin.com, or listen to the audiobook for free right here on Daytrippin's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to this channel and ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and keep watching more Beatles videos here.